Hey everybody, so I know a lot of you have been waiting for this one, and yes, it is finally time to go over the final chapter of My Hero Academia Vigilantes. It's been a while since I've opened up the bar to talk about Vigilantes specifically, and it's gonna be an interesting one to say the least. And the reason why I really had to distance myself from my emotions considering this chapter was because everything that was thrown at me during this chapter, it just gave me, I don't know, like the joy equivalent of when a bull sees red. So I had to really take my time on this one and gather my thoughts together. And honestly, I hate to say this, but I had to give it time in between me reading the chapter and then me going back and reading it once again. Because if I were to open up the bar immediately to talk about the final chapter, I think I probably would have regretted it. Because my opinion towards Vigilantes already as it is kind of biased. So I had to make sure that I could try to formulate some sort of unbiased opinion, or just finally give you my true feelings and emotions that just didn't come off facsimile. So, enough rambling. You know exactly what time it is. Let's go inside and grab ourselves a drink and talk about the final chapter of My Hero Academia Vigilantes. Alright, welcome to the bar, folks. Grab yourself a seat, or yourself a drink, because I got a feeling that we're gonna really digest this particular chapter. I mean, it's the final chapter of Vigilantes, and if I were to be completely truthful, if I did a chapter review for this particular chapter the day after I read it, it would have been absolutely glowing. I would have said it's the greatest series ever, but thankfully I waited a couple of months. Now, I am not going to throw a shit show, but before we even break down what this chapter entails, there's one thing that I really just have to get off my chest about manga and anime in general. That's right, everybody, we got a Dan rant on the way. Okay, my problem with manga and anime in the past 10 years is that it really feels like titles are having trouble when it comes to just ending their own series. And the trouble kind of dates back to Toriyama with the Cell Saga, thinking that he could end this series with Goku dying and Gohan becoming the protector of Earth. Because essentially, Boruto just lifts that entire storyline for itself. But whether it be Bleach, Naruto, Hunter x Hunter, Yu Yu Hakusho, Sailor Moon, every single anime that you could possibly think of, the endings just kind of drop the ball. And honestly, I might get a shitload of flack from this, but even Demon Slayer had a problem with this. I know everybody loves Demon Slayer, they love the ending, but when it comes to me, I absolutely despised Muzan. I would go ahead and say that it's possible that Muzan is probably the weakest shonen antagonist that I've ever encountered, period. Like, Muzan is fucking Killer Was Tuesday. Anyway, I feel like I'm moving way too far away of what I'm trying to say. I feel like Vigilantes is kind of suffering from those same type of ills that these series have also suffered from. Now, in hindsight, Vigilantes definitely benefits from being binged, but at the same time, this series probably would have been better if it was a weekly manga. This manga had a bi-weekly format that was just hard to digest. It caused a certain degree of fall off pretty frequently because people would just forget that the chapter was coming out the next week. And not to mention, if you were a frequent reader like me, every week it was like, okay, will Koichi die? And week after week it just became extremely tiresome, and then eventually I just started getting bored. I just didn't passionately want to talk about Vigilantes the way that I had been for the past 3 years. It just felt like this series that I had been religiously following was kind of turning against me. But if there was one thing that came out of it, seeing Koichi get murked week after week was one of the main reasons why I believe Bakugo wasn't truly dead. There was something about Koichi, quote-unquote, dying over and over in the final fight that made me just rethink everything for this series. I like to think that there's like a limited amount of fake-outs that you can pull in your series, but apparently in My Hero Academia, there's just a limitless amount of them. Like, we didn't think that Eraserhead would be able to contribute to the final battle, but he does, and we didn't think that Mirio would ever get his quirk heart back, but he did. There's just so much to My Hero Academia's story that sometimes we have to suspend whatever disbelief that we might have and just acknowledge the fact that the most predictable option is the most likely outcome. Murphy's Law and all that shit. So the question that every single My Hero Academia Vigilantes fan has been asking is, now that the title is over, will Koichi and the Vigilantes appear in My Hero Academia? And the answer is, well, if it doesn't continue in My Hero Academia, the end of My Hero Academia Vigilantes is arguably one of the biggest middle fingers Shonen Jump has ever given to its readers. Let's head over to the wall and I'll discuss why Koichi needs to appear in My Hero Academia. Okay, so for the remainder of our time here at the bar, we're going to discuss three things. One, we're going to talk about the chapter and discuss whether or not the chapter was up to our expectations. Two, we're going to talk about the future of Vigilantes. Does this ending actually provide us with some sustenance that the series can continue? And three, does the current situation in My Hero Academia provide enough support that we can bring in new characters from Vigilantes into the story and not have them overwhelm the plot? First things first, the chapter. Now, I believe that they had a conversation about the final chapter of Vigilantes and decided whether or not they were going to take this direction, because I can tell you right now, the fact that Koichi is a hero in the United States and in New York City of all places, oh my god, it's amazing. I was screaming when I saw his hero outfit. It looks straight up phenomenal. It's an homage to O'Clock and All Might. And don't even get me started when he first rolls out as the Skycrawler. I lost my mind when we see him just step out onto the platform. Like, this moment right here is what every single Vigilantes fan was waiting for. The moment where he steps out and says that I am here. And not only that, Koichi goes to save an airplane from falling out of the sky. He saves a fucking airplane. This is the guy who almost fell to his death during the Sky Egg arc. But this moment, when you see the kid kind of looking out the window and staring at Koichi, I couldn't help but hear like that weird Interstellar music as he's starting to like lift the plane up. And my mind kind of brought me back to the moment when he first saved Popstep. And that's honestly the first time he actually saved someone in general. I remembered what he said. At that moment, he begged the sky to accept him and just let him fly. Though it wasn't his time yet to fly. But now that the crawler is gone, only the Skycrawler remains, and we have Koichi flying through the goddamn sky. Also, the moment where Koichi goes to become a sidekick slash hero in the United States, that's the moment that we realize that they have known the ending of Vigilantes since the title was in its inception. The reason why Captain Celebrity was even introduced was because Koichi needed the outlet to go to once he knew that he was going to be in so much trouble that he might face jail time. But where the chapter left every single Vigilante just really kind of felt out in the open. The one that really had like a complete ending was actually Soga, because Soga kind of got his life together. You know, it kind of looks like he's dating Knuckle Duster's daughter, and it just kind of looks like, you know, he has it together. Whereas it still looks like Popstep is rehabbing slash trying to get her life back together after what happened during the whole Queen Bee debacle, and then Knuckle Duster's out here just repeating the cycle once again, picking up somebody that kind of looks like Deku. Actually, kind of looks like the original design for Deku. And I understand why they ended things the way that they did. They just tried to show us that the cycle is just going to continue itself once again. It just feels like Vigilantes was supposed to be the end of that cycle. Like, him and Knuckle Duster were going to figure out how to break that wheel, this vicious circle that's been going on and on and on. Honestly, besides seeing Koichi as the Skycrawler, the greatest part of this chapter was the title of the chapter, being named the Skycrawler Rising. When I saw that, I was like, ooh, you knew you were gonna get me with this one, didn't you? Don't try to trick me. Don't try to fucking mask it with this. It really hyped me up. Seeing Koichi in the I Heart New York sweater, it made me just gush over and over and over. I was like, oh my god, the Skycrawler's from my city. Like, come on. Honestly, one of the biggest takeaways for me during chapter 126 is now we actually know when Vigilantes is taking place. In chapter 125, we see that All For One has been working on the All Might ending Nomu. That conversation between the good doctor and All For One when they're discussing the All Might ending Nomu happens in, let's say, August. Now, flash forward a couple of months, in chapter 126, we see a reporter in America saying that the Skycrawler started his heroic career this spring. With that being said, we know that the All Might ending Nomu was pretty much done when we saw it in chapter 125. So, we know that August, Deku is probably undergoing the American Dream Plan, and that April, or rather that January, he's gonna take the UA entrance exam. And since the reporter says the Skycrawler started his career this past spring, it tells me that the end of My Hero Academia Vigilantes is probably halfway through the first year of My Hero Academia's canon, which would explain why, Japan is still kind of in good standing and not, reduced to rubble, meaning that Vigilantes didn't do a complete catch-up to the current story. Now, personally, I don't understand why they brought it to that point. I think it probably would have been more beneficial if you wanted to bring Koichi into the story, to bring My Hero Academia Vigilantes up to speed, to have him transition into My Hero Academia. But with this ending, it's really hard to, make the assumption that the Vigilantes will appear in the story. And now I guess is, a better time than ever to actually transition to the second thing I wanted to talk about, which is why I believe that it's possible the Vigilantes could appear in My Hero Academia. And I don't want to just sound like some, hopeful fan that's holding on to a glimmer of whatever might be, because there are quite a few plot holes in Vigilantes that really need to be elaborated upon in My Hero Academia. And there are just some plot holes in Vigilantes that just straight up don't make any sense whatsoever. Like, why does Koichi's dad have to be so mysterious? Why is every father figure in My Hero Academia an enigma? But the final chapter of Vigilantes is kind of told from the point of view of Koichi, as he's trying to digest a situation that is so over his head that we're completely disregarding the fact that we never saw any of the interior conversations. Like the fact that there was just not a decompression of just, Knuckle Duster explaining, hey, yeah, the reason why I left you that letter is because I kind of attract, huge amounts of bullshit, and you just got drawn into that bullshit and kind of finished my fight for me. Like, honestly, the best thing to happen to Koichi is him going to America, because if he still existed in Japan, my guess it would only be a matter of time before he went to work or something like that, or went to school, and then he makes a wrong turn and All For One's there to steal that awesome quirk of his. Like in chapter 126, we see the Vigilantes converse with everyone but each other. The Popstep and Koichi romance has been built since pretty much chapter 1, and what do they do in this chapter? But absolutely nothing. The sweatshirt MacGuffin? Completely forgotten about. This is what I mean though about me having the blinders on. If I had just done this review the minute the chapter came out, I wouldn't have been able to reflect on it like I am right now. Like, honestly, it feels like we've been cheated out of a lot of the narrative. I'm expecting Koichi and Popstep to have a conversation about why he needs to be a hero and why he needs to keep on doing the things that he does. I was expecting a conversation between him and Knuckle Duster about All For One. I was expecting Eraserhead to speak to him about what it means to truly be a hero. Instead, we got none of it. We got a fluff chapter of Koichi being a thriving hero in America while everyone still thinks of him as a villain. We got an homage to the Miracle in the Hudson, complete with a Sully Sullenberger reference, and it was just enough that, a couple months later, reading the chapter and kind of reflecting on it kind of pissed me off. Because to be quite honest, it really feels like the two writers of My Hero Academia right now are taking pages out of each other's book, because I tell you right now, if Horikoshi ends the story any way, shape, or form similar to how Furuhashi ended Vigilantes, people are going to pull a LeBron James and burn their jerseys in the middle of the street. The sheer amount of outrage that was generated from Horikoshi's decision to bring Bakugo back to life was crazy. It was palpable. But imagine this. The final chapter of My Hero Academia reveals who Deku's dad is, and instead of getting a face reveal, we get this. And the glass half full approach to this entire situation is looking at the final panel of the final chapter of Vigilantes, where it says the story continues in My Hero Academia. Now, depending on how you want to look at it, that could just be, hey, the story continues in My Hero Academia, go start reading My Hero Academia, or two, it could be that, hey, this story is going to continue and move over into My Hero Academia. And now, the biggest assumption that us Vigilantes fans have is, does this phrase mean that the story is going to actually continue in My Hero Academia, or is the series just done and the story begins in My Hero Academia? I hate to say, I'm actually at the point now where I'm genuinely questioning whether or not My Hero Academia Vigilantes exists within the current canon, or if it's being treated kind of like a My Hero Academia movie. Because if that's the case, what the fuck? Because my rationale goes two ways, narrative and personal. Personally, does Horikoshi even like the Vigilantes? Does he want to write the Vigilantes? Does he even want them in his story? Because that's a huge factor to it. If he doesn't want to write these characters, they're just not going to appear in the story. Or if they do appear in the story, they'll just get canon foddered off real fucking quick. And honestly, I feel like the biggest problem with My Hero Academia right now currently is that the story feels like it's about to end, but there's still so much to go, which is great because in a way it's starting to feel unpredictable again. But with that being said, so much needs to happen in My Hero Academia for them to actually get to the end of My Hero Academia that I wouldn't be surprised if some characters eventually leave the story, leaving room for more characters to eventually show up. I've actually seen a majority of people come out and say that they would prefer that Koichi doesn't appear in the main story right now because they don't want Koichi to show up and one, take away from the plot, and two, show up just to get, cannon fodder. And I think that the best thing that could have happened to help Koichi appear in My Hero Academia was All For One pulling the oh shit button and using that thing that would eventually cause him to have an expiration date. That officially means that All For One doesn't need to be beaten, All For One needs to be survived, which means in a way you can throw fresh body after fresh body after fresh body until eventually All For One just crumbles away and turns to dust. And I don't know how valid the statement is that Horikoshi gave out when he said the series is going to be ending next year, because if that's the case, we're still only in September. If it ends in January, we still have 3 months worth of content, and right now it feels like All For One's going to be defeated next month. So what I would say is, since Horikoshi has already been, beyond our expectations or, underwhelmed our expectations, let's just continue to have our expectations out there and not be surprised by anything. I don't know if what I said makes sense, but, essentially what I'm saying is, if a mangaka puts something out there that has you in a little bit of disbelief, suspend that disbelief and maybe just go with your gut feeling instead, because most likely your gut feeling is correct. Like, there's a sincere opportunity that that character isn't going anywhere. I'm finding that when it comes to My Hero Academia, when you get to that point of, wow, this can't possibly be what he's about to do, is it? When we get to that point, that is actually what is going to happen. Like, that is going to happen. He's going to find a way to get to that point. So in Vigilantes, when we see that the story continues in My Hero Academia, don't sell it short. There is still so much needed to be elaborated upon in My Hero Academia that the Vigilantes could quite possibly appear. So yeah, if you wanted my honest opinion about whether or not the Vigilantes have room to appear in My Hero Academia, as of right now in the current story, it really doesn't feel that way, but knowing the scope of what could possibly happen in the story, yeah, absolutely, they can appear. And the fact that there's just so many open plot lines left in My Hero Academia Vigilantes within its last chapter just makes me think that it has to continue in My Hero Academia, and if it doesn't, it is just such an oversight. And if the Vigilantes never appear in My Hero Academia, I'm gonna be pretty harsh right now, and I'm gonna say that My Hero Academia Vigilantes was nothing but a cash grab scheme by Shonen Jump to sell more books of My Hero Academia by creating a non-canon story that after 5 years of anticipation, we now know that they had zero plans to bring these characters into that story. And all that they wanted to do was create some non-canon bullshit that explained a little bit of what happens in the My Hero Academia universe and sell books. So yeah, I'm sorry to close up shop with me just kind of in a bad mood, because I really kind of just did not like the final chapter of Vigilantes. I liked, what happened in the chapter, but in terms of if this is the last we see of Vigilantes, I am really unhappy. I'm genuinely sad at the way that Vigilantes ended, and I'm kind of sad at the way that I'm ending things here right now on my final chapter review. It feels so bittersweet, but at the same time it feels so incomplete. And I'm sure I'll still make Vigilante theories down the line, but the fact that this is my final chapter review kind of hurts me to, say that I didn't like the final chapter of the series, Vigilantes helped build the bar. It helped build the channel. It helped me kind of connect with every single one of you here at YouTube. When the series ended the way that it did, I remember being so happy to see Koichi as a hero, but then it just kind of settled in and really kind of felt like Koichi was trapped as a hero. Because when you think think about it, he's not with anybody that he loves and cares about. He's thousands of miles away in America where everybody perceives him as a villain. So in a way, now that we've seen that the United States is getting ready to, pretty much back All For One, we could see a bunch of renegade heroes from America go to Japan to try to take out All For One. I mean, with everything that's happening with Star and Stripe and the fact that Koichi is from Japan, there's just so much intertwining that it's like, hey dude, Japan is like going through an international crisis right now. You kinda really need to get back. And now if the president of the United States is like every hero in America can't leave America, Koichi leaves America and becomes a vigilante again. From there, we could actually have this scene where Popstep gives him a sweater once again and goes, welcome back, Crawler. Like, it could happen. The small conversations that we wanted to happen in the final chapters of Vigilantes could happen as the introductory chapters in My Hero Academia and inspire people to go back and read Vigilantes. Not to mention, Vigilantes arguably has one of the greatest arcs in My Hero Academia period with the Aizawa origin arc. In turn, you have a bunch of readers that now go back and learn the story of Vigilantes and learn more about the My Hero Academia universe. It just feels like there's more to the Vigilantes story now that the story is over. If the title itself goes down as some random canon story, then that's what it is, and I thoroughly enjoyed every second of it. Koichi's journey from the Crawler to the Skycrawler is arguably my favorite story of My Hero Academia, and to be quite honest, he's probably one of my favorite heroes period of the entire series itself. The past 6 somewhat years or 5 somewhat years that we have had My Hero Academia Vigilantes, we have watched Koichi grow from so much. We've watched Slide and Glide go from a simple mobility quirk into this fantastic, majestic quirk. And I did enjoy the series from beginning to kinda the end. I did not enjoy that ending. That ending really made me unhappy. There wasn't enough for me to just say farewell to one of my favorite mangas ever. And if nothing ever comes of it in My Hero Academia, it just feels like one of the biggest slaps a mangaka has ever given a reader. And I'm gonna say something pretty mean, because the My Hero Academia community is a very vicious one, and Furuhashi is very lucky that a lot of that community doesn't read Vigilantes. Because like I said earlier, if My Hero Academia ends in any way, shape, or form close to how Vigilantes ended, people are going to flip their shit. So if I had to say one thing about Vigilantes, I would say that it has a fantastic story with a absolutely god-awful ending. And if the Vigilantes don't appear in My Hero Academia, wow, they just wasted 5 years of everybody's life on a story that literally doesn't matter at all. So let me know how the final chapter made you feel. I'm pretty sure now you know why I waited so long to make a video. So if this is the last little bit of new content for Vigilantes that I get to cover, man, it's kinda surreal. I knew it would be inevitable that one day I would have to say goodbye to Vigilantes. I never thought it would have to be in this type of circumstance though. But I do have to say, without Vigilantes, there is no bar, but most of all, without every single one of you, there is no bar as well. So I promise there will be more content on this channel. I will open up the bar for more. Also, look out for more YouTube shorts. I have a bunch of them on my TikTok that I gotta bring over to YouTube, so you guys can check those out as well. But enough of my ranting. Let me know what you think about the Vigilantes finale down below, and I'll catch y'all later. Cheers.